Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and valued participants, a very warm welcome to the MIZ Deciders Day 2023, or as I like to call it, the MIZ Independence Day, because for the next 2.5 hours, we're going to spend exploring and fostering journalism's independence from the powerful grasp of big tech. I'm Torben Klauser. I'm section lead at the Berlin-based think tank Agora and Digital Transformation, and I'm glad to be your host tonight. And looking at the audience, I think it's no surprise to anyone here that the relationship between quality journalism, independent quality journalism, and big digital platforms is, let's say, mixed. But as much as publishers and media companies are struggling not to lose too much revenue to the new big tech players in terms of ads, if you want to really reach your audience, is there any way around big tech? I think there isn't. Or is there? I mean, tonight, luckily, it's not about the challenges big tech poses, but mostly about the solutions. We have a group of marvelous keynote speakers who will shed light on European best practice examples and provide us with insights and strategies how to build a future where media outlets can thrive independently. We will hear from them one by one before they join me for a panel discussion and deepen the talk a little bit. And establish perspectives beyond the individual examples. But before we jump into the presentations, I would like to invite those people who made this evening possible. Those are MIZ and Volker Bach, the leadership of the Media Innovation Center Babelsberg, and Susanne Schmidt, head of Creative Europe Desk Berlin-Brandeburg. Welcome to the stage.
Thanks, Tom. Actually, the people who made this possible are our team, and so we're glad to be here. And our guests, which is not really easy to come over in these days because of union workers, snow, traffic, heavy snow in Munich. But we are happy that you are here. My name is Volker Bach. I'm the manager, the general manager of the MIBB. We are running the MIZ Babelsberg. In order of the media authority Berlin-Brandeburg. That means we are funded with public money. That makes our job more easy, and I think it's important that this is possible. We are glad that we are participating on innovation of media topics. We have 2 columns of work. One is the funding of projects, and the other column is the transfer of media innovation to where it is needed, to you, to our guests, so giving good examples of innovation work. And that's what we are going to do tonight. So I'm really keen on what is coming next. I know a little bit, and I can promise it will be an interesting evening. And for this, I give this mic to my colleague, MIZ. Glad that you're here. A very warm welcome to you here on the side and the people which are following us on screen.
Thank you, Volker. Welcome from my side to the Deciders Day tonight. My name is MIZ. I'm the head of MIZ Babelsberg. Last spring, we sat right here in this room with some media decision makers, and we wanted to know from these decision makers what are currently the biggest challenges in their business right now. And the dependence on the big tech platforms was one of the topics mentioned. This is a huge issue, a huge topic, and we thought about it for a long time with the team because we were asking ourselves, do we really want to tackle this issue? Can we even come up with solutions? And then I read this book by a Nobel Prize winner, Maria Ressa, How to stand up to a dictator. And in this biography, she very, very accurately describes the perverse effects of algorithm, perverse for the local journalism and at least for the democracy. Well, our democracies here in Europe are doing better than the democracy in the Philippines, Maria Reza's country. Our democratic systems work, more or less, but they can quickly be in danger if we all allow ourselves to be guided by opinions and fake news that are favored by algorithm of the big platforms. That's why it's really important to show third ways. And that's why today we're looking at best practice examples from Europe, the Netherlands, UK and Switzerland. Today we are looking outside the box and drawing inspiration. Yes, so thank you very much to our speakers tonight for that. Let me also thank our partner, Creative Europe Desk, Berlin-Brandeburg. Thank you to you, Susanne Schmidt, for supporting the MIZ for the third time, I guess, by now. And finally, I want to thank the MIZ team for making this event tonight technically and organizationally possible, despite the weather and strikes. And a big thank you, of course, to the team of Alex Berlin, our media partner tonight. Your support is really, really important and valuable to us, especially on a day like this. I wish you all a very pleasant evening and very interesting Deciders Day. And I give my micro to you, Susanne. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Hermance. Thanks a lot, Volker, and also the whole team. It's a big pleasure to have this evening with you, and it's a big pleasure to participate. I think we have fantastic speakers and very interesting examples what you could set up and to stay independent and to offer alternatives. My name is Susanne Schmidt. I'm running the local Creative Europe desk. Creative Europe is a funding program that is supporting the culture and creative industry, the audiovisual industry, and this is new since 2021, also giving funding to different journalistic projects, mainly for collaborations across borders. And since 2021, over 30 projects had been supported, very different ones. So one project is also here, represented by Alexandra Zeitlin. It's called European Focus. This is a pan-European newsletter with very different news compared to what you receive daily in different countries. That's only one example. There are many different others. We have at the moment, so to say, 3 different calls. We have open journalism partnerships with a deadline in February, and we have media literacy, also very interesting, with a deadline in March. And we have a new call, a so-called preparatory action, also dedicated to youth. So interesting new opportunities on that level. And we are so happy about this collaboration because for us, journalists are a really new target group. And we think it's really ideal to team up and organize something together. So a big thank you. And I'm really looking forward to this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this very warm welcome. And I take that, put it here. And now I'm looking forward to our first guest and first keynote. And the first one to introduce us to his vision of independent journalism beyond big tech is Harold Dunning. Harold is, well, he's many things, but amongst all them, he's co-founder of the Dutch journalism platform The Correspondent. And this is an independent, privacy-friendly, and completely ad-free digital media outlet that wants to, and here I quote, represent a new kind of journalism that doesn't follow media hype, but produces in-depth stories that help our readers to better understand the world. And a lot of what he and his team does is what he calls memberful design. And I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about what that is. Please welcome Harold Banning.
Thank you all for having me.
Sorry, I think you need to change to the green one.
This one?
Yeah, sorry.
The not fluffy one.
Did not.
This one was so nice and fluffy. Okay, you can hear me all now? Cool. Thank you all for having me. Thank you for MIZ for the invitation. And today I will be talking to you a bit about memberful design. The term that we coined together with New York University. My name is Harold Banning. I'm indeed the founder of Momkai and the co-founder of the Correspondent. Momkai is a studio that I founded more than 20 years ago in Amsterdam. We're based in Amsterdam and Berlin, and we help a lot of organizations to be innovative and to find creative solutions to build lasting connections. So we're always thinking about like how would this resonate with the people it's meant for, and how can it be not some sort of short-lived hype, but how can it have lasting impact? And here you see my whole wonderful team. We work with a lot of companies all around the world, in Europe, the US, Canada, and Japan. But we also sometimes participate in the projects that we help to start. So here you see the 8 projects that we are also actually co-founders of. And the one that is taking up most of my time and is close to my heart is the Correspondent, a journalism platform for what we call unbreaking news. So a lot of news leaves us cynical, divided, and less informed, and we really want to change that narrative and see how we can use the power of the community to build something different. But my background as a creative director is really in digital design. So let me tell you a little bit about how we came to this notion of memberful design and how you can use that in media innovation. So in digital design, you talk about the user experience. And this is how I grew up. I started the agency when I was 19, and that would be your focus all the time, the user experience. But over time, I really got fed up with the word user. To me, that felt like making junkies, like getting people hooked on your product, and very singular. It didn't really challenge me in the way that it would think about how it would be useful to a group or to a collective or to a family or to a team. And we really wanted to change that narrative. Also due to the ever-increasing complex challenges that we face as society, from polarizations to billionaires changing their minds over how a platform is called or what the platform is being used for, to rising sea levels, which is very relevant in my little country of the Netherlands. And none of us can solve these problems on our own. It's really, we have to come together. This is the most depressing slide that I have, so no worries, it will get better after this. All these illustrations, by the way, are created not by AI in this case, but by wonderful illustrators that also contribute to our journalism platform. This one from Ibrahim Rayakatin from India. So we really believe that it takes communities coming together to get us where we have to go. And it's really the power of the collective that requires the commitment of the individual. So what can we do as an individual? What is my personal passion? And how can I then connect that to a shared purpose that we have as a group? And we believe that with memberful design, we can find those creative solutions to the lasting connections. And memberful is not a word that I came up with. It's we co-founded a journalism research project together with Professor Jay Rosen and his Studio 2020 at New York University. He's one of the leading media critics, and he's also the one that inspired us already back in 2008 when he wrote an essay called "The People Formerly Known as the Audience," which was really focused on how in the digital realm can we much more use the interaction with the community, how can we learn from each other, and how, of course, everyone can be an expert at something, right? You can be a professor, but you can also be the mother of 2 children, or you can be a neighbor in a neighborhood. So there's different perspectives that you can bring, and how can you use that also as a platform. And we wanted to start a project to define that better and to learn from each other. That was called the Membership Puzzle Project. And this really studied how, as media, you can turn your strongest supporters into members. And I think Emily Goligoski, with whom we worked a lot in those years, really put it out in a very eloquently way. That it's really that you have to connect those passions of the individual to that shared larger purpose. So if you get that ratio right between the person and the group, you can be really successful as a membership organization, but also for other organizations. So we, with the design agency, we also work in different realms to use those learnings and create, for instance, better sport organizations or better clubs. The project in the end also became the membership guide, and for anyone that is interested in media innovation and didn't see this yet, then this can be really helpful. So I think our friends from the Bristol Cable, they're also in here being studied about how they make their decisions together with their members. And in the membership guide, you can find all kinds of tools and practical advice and case studies around membership models and how you can address these challenges of trust and sustainability. So this is very practical. It's up there. It has very great academic research from all around the world. I think it can be a helpful tool for anyone interested in those parts. But if we boil it down to what we really believe in with what we call memberful, it's really we want to find the relationships that go beyond transactional. So for instance, if I got a subscription to the Financial Times, I get information that I hope that my competitors don't have. What we see with, if you flip the narrative from subscription to membership, is that we really see that people join a cause and they fund your organization by having a membership because they want to have as many people read those news stories rather than this is information that gives me a cutting edge. And this came also out of the research that New York University did with the Correspondent, the journalism platform. And from a design point of view, we really view that as how can we do that really holistically and design branding that can build a movement that is really designed for belonging. And those lasting connections can also turn into a steady revenue stream that can help you fund ideas. So for instance, the Correspondent, the journalism platform now exists for 10 years, thanks to those members, keeps growing, and they support the cost and they help us to build a strong organization. We were also started with members. We had 2 crowdfundings, one in 2013 for the Dutch language, and later also in the English language with Unbreaking News in 2018. From a creative point of view and as a designer, I'm always really fascinated, and I also think it's quite funny how media loves to write about media. So that also gives you a lot of exposure. This is a helpful part of it. And it's now after 10 years, it's the 3rd largest membership journalism platform in the world, which we are always really grateful for because it's indeed no ads, it's completely independent and really involved with the members. We also tried the English version. We learned a lot from that because, that couldn't survive in the COVID time. But the Dutch version is very healthy, alive and kicking. So here you see a little bit of the platform, very holistically. So a digital platform and real world events, and all based on founding principles. Here you see how the platform will look, because after 10 years we redesigned it again, but this is not live yet, so I can't show that too long, but it's coming soon. And we are founded on 10 principles. One of them 10 years ago was this one: we protect your privacy by minimizing the personal data we collect. This is actually one that is recently we are re-evaluating again, because we had so little data that it sometimes was also hard to make certain decisions. This was written, of course, in a time frame when there were hardly any rules and it was Wild West. And now the rules are only getting better and better. And we changed this more to that we follow the rules in that sense, but not overly not collect data, because it was not helpful in understanding what our members would want or where they are residing. Another way that we wanted to think differently with the back tech was that we actually switched to an audio-only app that we built ourselves. So that way you could be independent of Spotify or Apple Podcasts. The podcasts are also on those platforms, but if you really don't want to be tracked or you want to completely stay in our own digital realm, then this is the platform where we do that. And all the lovely avatars that we create with Cléa Dieudonné, a French woman that worked in my team and now lives here in Berlin. We just gave them all really nice headphones and still keep that brand alive. Another way that we, I think what is always important in all this discussion is to diversify all the income. So one way that we do that is by publishing books. Rutger Bregman that you see here, that is the most successful of the authors. At one point in 2014, he said, like, I'm done. I've written all my articles. Can I not publish a book? And what we saw with a lot of other news outlets is that then goes to a different company, a different publishing house. And we never really understood that. We thought, he also became big on the platform. Can't we then publish it ourselves? And the first book was what is now called Utopia for Realists. And the other one, De meeste mensen deugen in my language, is Humankind, or Im Grunde gut, here in Germany. And it actually became a flywheel for the journalism. It became a way to create income because we published the books, often snippets of it already on the platform, or it was created with members on the platform. And once we tease that their new book is coming, we see that there's a lot of interest and a lot of people buy it before it comes out. And what that does is that it immediately gets into a top 10 list. And once you're in the top 10 list, you stay there. So that works really well for non-profit, or how you say, non-fiction books. It's actually quite great that here you see them all. And you see also a design line, which we started 9 years ago. And that also works in bookstores, because the bookstores start grouping the books together and they become more successful from each other. De meeste mensen deugen actually is sold 1.5 million copies worldwide for a really positive story on how it's kindness that it's helping us as a society. And the latest book, this one, I just learned this week that we sold the rights to Germany as well, on Truth. And this will come out hopefully next year. So how we can have a different view on truth. Another thing where we really learn from is that what the things that we design or create, we also do in different setups. So with the design agency, with Momkai, we work on memorable design, for instance, with a journalism startup in Tokyo, or with research and integrity professors throughout Europe that created a new platform called the MIZ of Good Science. And with all these meaningful things, or what we call meaningful member design, it actually all comes down to that you not always can count all the things that are really meaningful. A smart man once said. And if you want to hear me talk longer about memorable design, I have a little podcast about that. So you can follow that there, where we really dive into the other fire starters, so the people that start new initiatives and what we can learn from them. For instance, the founder of Clue, Ida Tin, or the global CTO of Greenpeace. And that concludes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harald, for the introduction and your vision for more independent journalism through memorable design. And we will hear and learn more from you later on the panel.
Yeah.
So thank you and goodbye for now,
okay.
and see you soon, because we have a tough schedule. Well, now that we have heard about a new and maybe better relationship between editorial teams and their members or audience, our next speaker will focus on the value of collaboration between different editorial teams. Lorenzo Ferrari is editorial coordinator at the European Data Journalism Network, and I'm very much looking forward to his experience in fostering collaboration and making people collaborate. Welcome on stage, Lorenzo. Glad to have you here.
And thank you everybody for having me here and for being here. It's a pleasure. The European Data Journalism Network, that's the kind of experience I'm presenting you tonight. It's really a network. It's currently made of 33 media outlets across 22 different European countries. We currently have one member in Germany, which is Deutsche Welle. Actually, in the rest of Europe, or most of our members are pretty small, independent, non-profit media. So Deutsche Welle is a bit of an outlier within our network. Many of the other members are more similar to the kind of media outlets that I'm representing here tonight. Anyway, the network was founded in 2017. It's really a network in the sense that it doesn't even have a legal entity of its own at this stage. It's a group, basically, of media outlets. Doesn't have employees of its own. I coordinate the network, but I formally work for OBC Transeuropa, which is an Italy-based media which coordinates the network. The network operates partly thanks to the support that members give, and largely thanks to grants, especially European Commission grants so far. What we do is basically two types of things. One is to produce journalism, and in particular to produce cross-border collaborative journalism based on data, covering topics which are relevant for more than one country. So covering wildfires in Europe, covering mental health care in Europe, covering femicides, all sort of topics that can be interesting for audiences in multiple countries. And more in general, what we try to do is also to promote data journalism and collaborative journalism culture across Europe by providing training, by developing tools, by setting up events, and this sort of activity that I'm also doing here tonight, basically. And in our work, we are not really looking for revenue or even traffic. What really matters to us, it's basically that our content circulates as much as possible across Europe. We don't have a large audience, or we don't seek a large audience of our own, in the sense that we like the idea of relying on other existing media outlets, including our members, but not only our members, in order to reach out to the audience. So to have set up a sort of relationship with other media who can act as multipliers and reach to the larger public in several countries, and to build a relationship of trust with other media, other journalists across Europe. So what we do is basically to promote as much as possible the reuse, translation, adaptation, other forms of uptake of the content we produce by others in several languages. And we kind of have a few people who work on this and a few activities to encourage this. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a couple of things, or I'm going to focus about a couple of things that are like at the core of the work we do and I do at the European Data Journalism Network, which are relevant, I believe, if we are discussing ways in order to make media more resilient, less dependent on big tech constraints in a way. So I'm going to talk first about some aspects of collaborative journalism and then say a few words about data journalism more specifically. Collaborative journalism, I believe it can be, or at least collaboration, can be one possible way out of the constraints that most, if not all, media outlets face. I will present a little bit how we work or how we collaborate, hoping that that can be something interesting or inspiring for some of you. Generally speaking, collaborative journalism can take very different forms. There's a lot of possible options, possible formats, possible setups for collaboration. What we do is to collaborate cross-border. All our projects, all our investigations involve at least 2 newsrooms from 2 different European countries, usually way more than 2. And collaborations are project-specific in the sense that if we decide that we want to produce an investigation about femicide in Europe, any journalist within the network who's interested in joining and working the topic, they join and have meetings and set up a timeline and design a number of outputs and work for them. And once the outputs are out, basically the collaboration ends. And maybe in some cases there will be follow-ups, but generally speaking, we form these groups that we call data units, which are project specifics, and then they basically not really disappear, they end and maybe take different forms. This sort of collaboration take place within the general framework of the network, which sets a few principles, rules, procedures, and then all collaborations actually are very flexible in a way, because case by case, and also depending on the partners who are involved, and the topic and the kind of data work that is needed, the collaboration takes different forms within this general framework. Again, collaboration takes or means different things at different stages of the editorial process, both before and after the publication. We usually do most of these things for our investigations, but sometimes only 1 or 2, or it really depends on what is needed, what is useful, what is interesting to do. I just maybe say a couple of things about one of the key collaboration modes that we have, which is the joint collection of materials, basically. So we do data journalism, and it's very, very handy if you can count on journalists in multiple countries when you do an investigation based on data covering multiple countries. So if we are doing an investigation about femicide in Europe, there is no data set about femicide at the European level, and what we do is basically that I bring the data from Italy, or somebody else from Germany, or somebody else from the Netherlands, and so on, and then we pull all those data together, try to harmonize them, and see to what an extent they can be used, compared, and combined in order to tell a bigger picture and present the audience with it. But it's not only data, we also collect and share testimonies, interviews with experts, all sort of stuff that you usually collect from the field or from people in different countries and pull them together. In this way, it's quite obvious, I imagine, that we can collect a large deal of materials that would be incredibly hard for one single journalist or one single newsroom in Europe to collect, because most of us are largely focused on a given country or a given language, and it's not easy to work with so many different languages and realities across Europe. The collaborative model was not at the core of EDGNet, as we call the network, from the beginning. We started with a different approach and then came to the collaborative investigation model over time. And it's quite clear that there are a lot of benefits connected with it, at least for us. There's this kind of pooling of expertise and skills, not only language, but also if you talk about data journalism, you need to have somebody who's strong on scraping, on design, on interactive visuals, there's quite a lot of technical skills that are useful to have, and especially small or independent newsrooms maybe don't have so many expertise or skills within their small team. We have, or there is this element of basically saving time, saving money by working together and making the most efficient use of the resources that are available. We kind of contribute to circulate each other's content across the border and achieve greater reach and impact in this way. And I work for the European Data Journalism Network since 6 years now, and I wouldn't be here if it was not fun to collaborate. I mean, usually it's very, very enriching experience. I have the chance to work with wonderful newsrooms across Europe, which do a lot of interesting stuff, and it can really be fun. Of course, this all good, but we probably know that collaboration can be demanding as well. That there are costs, there are risks, there is frustration that is not always doesn't always run as it should. So there are costs, there are time waste to some extent, or time you need to invest in coordination and collaboration. There are misunderstandings, there are clashes of egos or clashes of visions. There's cultural differences between countries in Europe, which is something real. Of course, you take higher risks in some extent. You need to rely on others. You need to trust others. There might be more delays. There might be conflicts. A lot of things can go wrong. And of course, if you develop content or produce content in a collaborative way, you need to be ready to accept the fact that others will also publish content based on those materials at the same time as you. It's not only you who have the exclusivity on that content, but the other involved journalists and newsrooms across Europe are going to use that as well. So benefits and costs, I think, or we tried to develop a few strategies or test some ways in order to reduce costs and increase the benefits, or at least to have a decent balance between the two, so it's not too frustrating. So to get a bit practical, one thing which is totally crucial, it seems obvious, but it is not, is to choose the right partners when you want to collaborate. It's not only people that you like, because some media outlets, maybe they're not able or willing or keen on collaborating. They do other type of work. And to understand properly how they work, because media outlets are not all the same. There are different organizational structures, chains of command, workflows, visions, and so on. So taking proper time in order to make sure that you find a good partner is a good investment. Making sure that the terms of a collaboration are clear from the outset, meaning that basically be ready and prepare for the worst case scenario. What happens if things don't work out properly and you need to adjust or discuss things? It's very useful if things are clear from the beginning. That helps in the process. It's a very good idea, as always in life, I guess, to divide tasks in an effective way. But in practical terms, I think it means that, in our experience, it's crucial to have one single journalist who's leader of a given investigation. So he has really the task to bring the investigation forward and to keep everybody on board and so on. It's very useful to have somebody who facilitates the collaboration, which is basically my role. So to try to make sure that things go as easy, as smoothly, as pleasant as possible for the people involved. And to have somebody who have an external eye on the methodology, the source, the kind of analysis that we do, and provide critical, constructive feedback, taking into account the egos and all the things that need to be taken into account. And then sometimes all seems to work fine, and then the collaboration doesn't really work because simply people don't really talk with each other on the right channel. Some journalists are used to work by calling each other all the time. Somebody are on WhatsApp and Signal, somebody is on Slack, somebody is on email, and they don't basically meet, or they don't make it to talk with each other and to agree. So even very basic obstacles, if you want, sometimes hinder collaboration. So anyway, agreeing on the right channels or platforms to communicate, having some shared dashboard files and so on. Meetings, what we have in the network is a weekly internal newsletter which provides the sort of weekly wrap-up of what's going on within the network, and it's very useful to keep all these 33 newsrooms on board. Just a few more words related to the data journalism component. All what I said before, I think, applies largely to any kind of journalism. It's not strictly related to data journalism. What is more related to data journalism, again, if we talk about resilience and reducing dependence on big tech and so on, I think is that the fact that data journalism, the culture of data journalism, is really born out of the culture of the data science more in general. So it's not, some of the values and the approach are not the typical values of legacy journalism, are really something different coming from a culture of free and open web and that sort of approach. And this means that most of the people also who work for the network, and most of our approach tends to privilege the development of our own tools, or to use sources which are open, to use tools which are open, non-profit, and independent. I put a few examples there, but of course there are more. This culture coming from the data science also means, I guess, to try to be as transparent as possible when it comes to the sources, the methodology, limitations, the mistakes that we make, and to discuss this open. So we often publish articles, and then sometimes we publish the methodological notes, which are even longer than the long-form articles. So there's a lot of details and who are shared for the people who are interested. Of course, it's not meant for anybody, but if you're interested, you can find a lot of details on how we work, and also the limitations and how we dealt with them. And then we try to share as much as possible the materials that we develop. Not always, not immediately, but to release them as much as possible in order to really invite others to make use of them, to reuse them, to build upon them. One final point about the data journalism. Again, if we're talking about reducing dependence of big tech, it's probably useful if you have a data journalist in your team. So somebody who can take a look and make sense of the metrics and test what's going on and understand or test the algorithms and so on. So have data skills in the team, it's usually a good idea, I guess, in this world. So that's my role, basically, again, to promote data journalism, invite you to have your own data journalist in your team. I'll stop here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. The one thing that I really took with me or take with me now is that the most important thing in collaboration is to really spend some effort on finding the right partners. And I'm now convinced that the people organizing tonight have spent the right effort to finding the good people and the right people to share their experiences. Thank you very much. We're going to see you in a few minutes on the panel again. Thank you, Lorenzo. Right, so thanks to Harold, we have seen the connection or new perspectives on the relation of editorial teams and their audiences of members. Thanks to Lorenzo, we have seen the importance of relations amongst editorial teams themselves. And next up, and you might even think this was planned beforehand, is an expert who will share her experiences on how to build a new relation with big tech platforms. Alice Meisen is strategy lead at the Bristol Cable, an investigative newspaper which is 100% owned by thousands of local people, but free to access for all in digital and print. And obviously, she is the only one who really embraces digital technologies because she's not here with us tonight in person, but rather on the screen. And we're trying to link her up to the screen because she is still in Bristol because a flight was cancelled. And in these days, luckily, we have the technology to bridge the channel between the UK and continental Europe. And I can see Alice. And can she hear me? Is that a yes? Yes, she can hear me. Great. So we're still working a little bit on redesigning the stage, getting rid of the nice Christmas appearance. And I'll try to bridge the content gap, so until people can also not only see me and the screen, but you on the screen as well. All right, so we should also be able to hear you. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Yes,
Hi, everybody.
we can also hear you. So I give the stage to Alice Meisen. Thanks for being with us and looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I hope that you can all hear me. And thank you so much for having me. I was intending on being with you today. My flight was cancelled at the last minute, so I'm afraid you're having to put up with a sort of robotic version of me. I promise I am real and not an AI. But I am really looking forward to speaking to you today, so thank you so much for having me. And if we can go to the first slide, essentially what I wanted to talk to you about today was the ways in which the Bristol Cable defies the algorithm. Now, well, I'll introduce myself first. Obviously, Torben did a great job of introducing me. I am the strategy lead at the Bristol Cable, which means that I'm not a journalist. I am working away in the background, what we call our backroom staff. We are kind of, pulling the levers and trying to make things work. So I work a lot on membership, fundraising, and essentially being an external link with the wider industry. So I actually joined the Bristol Cable as the communications lead in 2022, and we had a bit of a staff reshuffle recently, which led to me becoming the strategy lead. We hired a social media producer. So there's been a lot of change at the Bristol Cable recently. And so my job has kind of morphed from communications generally to much more industry-facing communications, strategy, finance, that sort of work. And I'll tell you a little bit about what the cable is as well. Again, Torben did a great job of introducing it, but I'll give you hopefully a bit of background so that you can understand kind of where we came from and what we do. So the Bristol Cable has been around for almost 10 years. 2024 will be our 10th year in operation. And given that we started out as a small, scrappy volunteer project, that is really quite amazing. I'm sure that you all know on mainland Europe, you've had the same kinds of funding issues as we've had in the UK. And we set up sort of as a response to the failures of local journalism particularly, but UK journalism generally. As you all know, the phone hacking scandal blew up in 2012. And so in 2014, the Bristol Cable launched. And it's a reader-owned cooperative media outlet. We're based in the city of Bristol, which is a city of 500,000 people, 500,000 people-ish. We're pioneering a new model for how local news should be owned and produced. And we're directly funded and owned by around 2,500 members now, who contribute almost half of our income. What we publish is in-depth local journalism. Primarily, we publish investigative pieces, solutions pieces, but we also publish community voice pieces, and we frequently engage our audience in our work. And that is, our members, but also the people who aren't members who read the paper. We often ask them for their opinions or their experiences so that we can use that in our reporting. We publish regularly online. We have a weekly newsletter, and then also a monthly behind-the-scenes newsletter that's specific to members. We have podcasts, we do videos, and we also have a quarterly newspaper with up to 30,000 copies, which we print every quarter. But all our journalism is free to access, and it's made free by members, is what we say. So you can pick up a paper in town throughout the city and plenty of venues. It's completely free to pick up a paper and keep it. You can also access our website for free. There is no paywall, but we ask people to become members and to pay as much as they can in order to keep us alive. And everybody who becomes a member is a part owner of the paper. You can become a member for as little as £1 a month, and as much as you like. We ask people to try and give more than £1 a month if they can, but we want to keep that democracy accessible. So next slide, please. We do not completely eschew social media. When I'm saying that we defy the algorithm, that is because our primary concern is serving our members and doing a little bit like Harold was saying from the correspondent a minute ago. He was saying that they do unbreaking news. Sometimes people call it slow news. Ultimately, we're focused on in-depth investigations that tell a full story. We're not interested in clickbait and generating attention-grabbing headlines. Well, maybe that's not true. We do want to generate attention-grabbing headlines. That's just not all we want to do. So we are very much online. We have several social media accounts. However, we use our social media to attract new members and new readers. And for better or for worse, social media hasn't historically been much of a primary focus for the cable over the last 10 years. How we've used it, how much we've used it, who has been running it has changed quite a bit. And so it's only just recently that we've hired our first ever social media producer to really work out how we're using it, how we are consistently paying it the right kind of attention. We don't have any online advertising revenue. So while we're always attempting to attract readers, we don't have this direct relationship between clicks and revenue. So what we're now trying to do is focus on having a really clear strategy for how we build a relationship with social media in an adaptable and useful way that's linked specifically to our multimedia strategy. So how are we making podcasts? How are we making video? Which of our investigations and our features are text articles or our videos or our podcasts or are a Twitter thread? I refuse to call it X, by the way, just so you know. Because the platform and algorithm landscape is always in flux, but particularly at the moment, we want to make sure that we are using it in a way that makes sense and, not just focusing on Twitter threads because we have the largest following there. Twitter, as everybody knows, is kind of, slightly burning to the ground, and it remains to be seen what will happen. So we need to be really open to the idea that we might need to move quickly. And so we're not just kind of dedicated to doing what we've always done and hoping that it will still work. We're also really aware that online, there's a lot that can be achieved but we also have ethical commitments, and we've made a really clear, dare I say it, brand name for ourselves by being an ethical news organization. There are so many unethical news organizations in the UK, and we have pitched ourselves as an alternative to that. And so we have essentially a reputation to uphold, particularly given that we've built our own membership system. And so we talk a lot about not sharing or selling anybody's data, and we need to stick to that. So, for example, recently we've discussed whether or not to use Pixel to better understand and segment our audience, but we've not decided that we will go down that road because we don't really fully understand what those ethical implications might be if we decided to do that. And we don't, for example, use Google Analytics, but we do have an open source analytics platform that we use called Matimo, which essentially does the same thing, but it doesn't collect and share people's data. It has a lot more in the way of privacy. Next slide, please. So these are our editorial products. We have our quarterly newspaper, we have our weekly newsletter, and then every day, usually our average is one post a day. That might be a podcast, it might be a video, or it might be a written article, or it might be hybrid, it might be a bit of both. So that's what we do and how frequently we do it. So I'll talk to you a little bit also about just how we kind of started and how we've built community, which has allowed us to somewhat defy the algorithm. If we can go to the next slide. This poster was the first ever example of the cable kind of out in the world, if you like. The cable's based in grassroots organizing, and we've survived for a decade with a mix of membership income and grant income. This poster was the beginning of our grassroots organizing, which helped us to launch. We had a crowdfunder of about 100 people, which raised about £1,500. And all of the staff at the cable at that time, I think there was about 4 or 5 people, and everybody was a volunteer. So for a good couple of years, everybody was working at the cable for free alongside their other jobs, which is really phenomenal. I was involved as a director in the first couple of years, and I really still can't understand how they managed to do it. Now we have a staff of 10 and we're all paid. Some of us are part-time, some of us are full-time, but we're all paid a salary, and we're all still too busy. So I have no idea how they did it, but they did it. And this, I guess you could say that this poster was the first example of one of our call-outs, which is something that we do now regularly. We invite people, as I said, to collaborate in our work. So I think we describe it in that poster as a multimedia citizen cooperative, which is a slightly wordy way. We're a little bit better at our comms now. But yes, it was basically doing that, relentless networking, members meetings. And I think in 2014, anger about the British media industry was at an all-time high. So that worked in our favour. Next slide, please. So we set up because we saw that local media wasn't serving people or communities properly. We were trying to address 3 related problems in local journalism, which was 1, the broken local news business model. Essentially, people were not paying for news anymore because of the internet. I don't need to explain that, I'm sure, to most people in the room. And so local media organizations and local newspapers were being bought up by big companies. And so there was a huge amount of consolidation. And that essentially was leading to the declining quality of journalism and a declining trust in news. So those 3 things really were what we were trying to address. We really cared about solving this because it matters for our local communities. You know, we know that there's a lot of research out there now to say that communities have a higher quality of life when they have strong local news. There was one study that showed that there was less corruption, there was less wastage of public money, and there was even less pollution in communities where there was strong local public interest journalism. So we believe that local media should be this civic issue, that it's a public health issue, that it is foundation for civic engagement in local democracy and accountability. And that at its best, it's a community asset. And that's why our community membership ownership model is really important to us and is the foundation of what we do. Next slide, please. It's been a long road to get to where we are today, and almost a decade since our first community meetings. We've printed almost 1 million copies of the cable now, and we've seen a real change in the local media ecosystem and beyond. We've had a fair amount of impact sort of nationally. We've seen a lot of other new local news cooperatives spring up, and other local news outlets that are not cooperatives but are kind of similar in tone or similar in organizing style, that sort of thing. So we're really proud of that. And this is an image from one of our annual general meetings, which is our big kind of members event that happens once a year. Next slide, please. So ultimately, you can describe the cable as a lot of different things, as a co-op, as a members organization, but ultimately we are doing investigative, independent journalism. You could call it slow news or community journalism, but ultimately we're focused on in-depth stories that really benefit the population of Bristol, and often in collaboration with those people. Next slide, please. A way that we often describe this is that we're a newspaper worth supporting. So our members, like I said, and also as somebody said earlier, that it's not transactional, it's about membership. It's not, we don't use the word subscriber because we want to make it really clear that people are not giving us £5 and then we give them a newspaper, or giving us £2 and we give them an online article. It's about a long-term business model where members are sustaining us in the long term so that we can focus on shorter and longer investigations, and we can do those investigations however long it takes to do them. Members also get a say in our coverage as well. So if they don't like the way that we've addressed an issue, they can tell us that at the annual general meeting. If they don't like something that we're doing, for example, our organisation has historically been incredibly white and middle class. Lots of people that have worked on the staff here look and sound like me. And while we have improved on that in the last year, we haven't improved, for the previous 8 years before that. So last year, our annual general meeting, we were called out quite publicly, actually, by one of our members who said, we know you've done a little bit about diversity, but you need to do a lot. And we've really kind of, taken that feedback from our members. And we appreciate that, if we're saying that we're holding people in Bristol accountable, then we also need to be accountable to our members. So we take our membership model really seriously, and we want to be worth supporting long term, even if people aren't seeing the immediate results of that straight away, in terms of, you pay for your paywall and the paywall comes down. It's a different kind of relationship. Next slide, please. So membership growth that's our North Star. If we feel as though if we can see that our membership is growing, then we feel as though we're doing a good job, we're doing what we need to do. And we've seen quite a lot of success with our recent membership campaign, which I'm very relieved about, because I was planning that for several months and it's paid off. So I feel very good about that. But that's another PowerPoint presentation. Next slide, please. So this is what our annual general meetings look like, how we bring our members together. We basically ask people big organizational questions. We provide them with the context. We get people into small groups so that they can discuss it. And then we give them the opportunity to write notes or put stickers or Post-its or something, on a board or on a page, that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting and quite fun event that we always look forward to. Next slide, please. Some of the questions that we've asked in the past are, what kind of journalism should we prioritize? Solutions journalism, investigations, breaking news, features, that sort of thing. Where we should spend our money. Should we be involved in sort of campaigning journalism, pushing for specific policy changes? Should we apply for money from Google? So it's all of these kinds of questions that we can ask our membership. And we're really grateful for that, because it gives us that feedback and that steer. Next slide, please. Again, this is just a few images from the AGM. We get people together. You can see there all of our kind of, it looks a bit like arts and crafts, but it's kind of, that's all of our feedback, basically, that people are sort of in the midst of giving us. Next slide, please. And we often say that this is not just a feedback session in a kind of, dry, sort of officious way, but it's also a bit of a vibe check. Are people, how many people come? Are people excited to be there? Do people generally seem happy with what we're doing? Are they talking about being pleased with what the last year has been like at the cable, that sort of thing? So we're trying to get a real general sense of, are we doing a good job, and are we serving our membership in a way that makes them want to carry on being members and recommend us to other people? Next slide, please. Another thing about community engagement, as well as creating this community that funds us, is also that it produces other benefits to our work. It produces better informed journalism, because if people trust us, they're more willing to be sources. They're more willing to give us their perspectives, and we get more diverse perspectives the more members we have. It steers our priorities, and we get that feedback, like I said. It's innovation as well. We see new forms of journalism by crowdsourcing articles, and that participation really builds that trust and loyalty. When we're benefiting from the kind of collective intelligence of thousands of people around us, and people feel seen, and the communities that we're talking about are at the center of that reporting, they are able to trust journalists better. And I'm not sure in your respective countries what the trust level is. In the UK, it's incredibly low. I think it's something like 24% in the last Reuters Institute report. About 24% of people in the UK trust journalists, which is not good, let's say. Next slide, please. Yes, this is our call out platform. We also built our own membership platform. One of my colleagues, Will, who's a bit of a genius, built us essentially a CRM. And we have, all of our members in there, all of their details, so that we can send them the paper and all that kind of thing. But we can also give them these surveys, so they can give us experiences, quotes, information that we can put into our reporting. And that's really exciting for us. It's really engaging for people, but it's also really exciting for us to be able to connect with people in that way. And that's B2B, which is shared between the cable use it, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism uses it, and Collective in Germany uses it as well. So final slide, penultimate slide. What are the challenges that we're facing at the moment? One of the obvious ones is, why pay if it's free? So we really have to make that case, and that is a real cultural shift that we're trying to kind of pioneer. Is trying to get people to pay for journalism is really hard, even if they like what we do. I have friends of mine who, they know I work at the paper, they love the cable, they've known about it since it started, and they still don't pay for the cable because it's fine, I could just get it on the BBC, or I can get it, I can get news online for free. I don't need to pay for it. And so we're still really 10 years later coming up against that barrier of people just do not expect to pay for news and for journalism anymore. We also have those concerns about utility versus ethical concerns. Do we use Pixel if it helps us to reach thousands more people, but we have to accept, an even closer relationship with Meta than just having a Facebook account? That lack of data and our capacity to get it then prevents us from doing a lot of things that we would like to do, reaching a lot of people we'd like to reach. The infrastructure for independent news just really isn't there, and for public interest news, if you don't have a lot of money, you don't have access to a lot of the things that the bigger newspaper organizations that are owned by big companies have access to. We need to be able to show our impact. That's very difficult when you're doing long-term investigations and you're not basing your impact on sort of click rates and that sort of thing. Journalism that matters. We know that our journalism matters, but how can we really clearly show that? And then last but not least, sustainability. We are, like I said, roughly half member funded, half grant funded now. However, those grants have very swiftly dried up. And I know that that is the case all across Europe. But we've also shot ourselves in the foot by leaving the EU. And so I didn't vote for it. It's not my fault. But those grants that would have been available to us from the EU before are now not available to us. So we're having a real struggle to fundraise from grants. We haven't been able to secure new grants this year. So we are still waiting to try and find some new grant funding. And that's a real worry for us. We've not had to have any redundancies or anything like that for the whole decade that we've been around. But, we're looking at a really different economic climate. And so that's kind of to be continued, really. So final slide, please. This is what we've managed to achieve, a decade of free to access public interest journalism, which is something that we're incredibly proud of. And like I said, it's been a very long journey to get here, but we have managed to do it by building community and building membership. And that is the path that we continue to tread in order to try and defy the algorithm. So thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to answering any questions that people have on the panel later.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alice. And I have to say, there's one thing, there are many things that resonated with me of what you said, but one thing resonated most, and that was when you said you're working very hard on paying the right social media network the right amount of attention, because that's something I'm struggling as well with every day. And I'm glad I'm not a social media strategist, because I would fail. But I'm sure this is something that you're going to manage. We're going to continue the conversation in a little bit on the panel. And I think we have another slide change of the stage, because, well, I said Alice was talking about the new relationship between journalism and platforms, but really what she was talking about was rather, from my perspective, to connect both previous talks on new relationship between media outlets and their members, and cooperation also with them. And there's a lot of stuff happening. A lot of stuff happening behind me. Anyways, no worries. We are very much looking forward to our last experts on stage. As soon as I get the signal that we're good to go, we are good to go. Great. Is Katharina Hemmer good to go? She is good to go. Welcome to our stage. She is Managing Director at Republik, a digital magazine for politics, business, society, and culture. And she'll explain to us how her team managed to build a media outlet that is really based on subscription revenue, and how they manage their community day to day. Having said that, Katharina, you're well equipped with a pointer and a microphone. Good to go. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, MIZ, for having me. Actually, today my presentation was far quicker than I was with all the microphone stuff and all that. Let's see how that works. Yes. So I think for this last presentation today, we're actually kind of coming full circle. You're going to hear lots of things that you kind of already heard before, so I hope it'll still be interesting. What I will be presenting is the Republik, which is a magazine from Switzerland. And this project is actually, well, it was at least in part inspired by the memberful idea and the membership puzzle that Harald talked about in the very first presentation. So let's start with that. We're a Swiss digital magazine covering politics, digital democracy, economy, culture, and the climate crisis. We're based in Zurich. We started there with a hugely successful crowdfunding in 2018, kind of following a wave of pretty bad news for media. So we're since then made in Zurich, based in Zurich. Since that crowdfunding, we've built a crew of about 50 people working for the magazine. That's about 38 in FTs. So we're pretty fast, pretty large. And Republik was, the reason of existence for Republik is actually that there is no journalism, that there's no democracy without journalism. Does it work the other way around as well? Maybe, okay. So without journalism, no democracy. And that was the reason for Republik to start its life. We started with a crowdfunding, with a manifest, arguing that if there's no journalism that holds power to account, if there's no journalism that informs the public, that is responsible to the public, if there's no independent journalism, then there cannot be good democracy. And that was something that resonated very well with the public, that made our crowdfunding very successful. And you will see throughout the presentation, we are working very strongly with the idea of members and of a common idea and a common purpose, but we're also noticing that this gets harder by time. And mind you, we have not yet made the 10 years that Bristol Cable, for example, has, where we just had, well, this year we have our 6th birthday, and we have to work very hard to make all this happen. We are funded by our readers, and you've heard that a couple of times today already. Yes, Republik is also funded by our readers. We're completely ad-free. The only revenue we have is the income by our members and subscribers. We exist fully digitally, so we don't have any print issues. You can read us on the website or in the app. We have a hard product paywall, so you can only access and read if you are a member or a subscriber or have a trial access. But we have 100% open social distribution. So if you have a link and you send that link to one of your friends, that friend can read the full article for free. We also have, since last year, you have the possibility to listen to every article. We have, I'm not sure how you say that correctly in English, but professional voice actors, very slowly, professional, there it is, professional speakers that read each and every article every day, so you can listen to every article. And also, and you've heard that a couple times already today, we also do not give our readers' data to anyone. So we don't have any third-party pixels on our website. We do not give any data to anyone. We just use it for ourselves. And we also try to use as little data as possible. And we're also kind of grappling with that, because the less data you have, the more difficult it gets to know your audience and to know how to talk to them and give them what they need. However, the not collecting data is one part of enabling trust. For us, it's very important that we can build on the community we have, because they pay us. They are everything we have. So what we did when we founded Republik is we built dialogue and transparency into the structure. We had the work of for example, Harald and his colleagues. We knew a lot about how should membership work, what does it need to make membership successful. And so we started with a cooperative, as well as the Bristol Cable. The Republik magazine, the publishing company, is based on a cooperative that is non-profit and that aims to advance democracy by strengthening journalism. Let me tell you, it's complicated, seriously complicated, especially with the finances. I'm not gonna, let me talk you through the details. No, it's complicated, but it's worth it. We have right now more than 28,000 members and subscribers that are supporting us, and we're very lucky to have them, and it's worth to have all this, to work with all the tricky details there. We are owned by our members. Well, let me turn that around. Our members own 46% of the magazine through the cooperative. And And we also have a cooperative council. That's 30 people. They're kind of a member parliament, and they work very closely with us, with the newsroom. They go with us through all the financial processes. They help us with events. They give us some feedback, from kind of external feedback. So we're very close with them. And because of the cooperative, we also do many things that usually, as a media company, do not do very publicly. We do them publicly. So the elections of the board, they're done publicly for every term. Every year we have a vote where the the members of the cooperative have to approve our annual report and our financial statements. And because that's very important to us, we also every year publish our budget, so that members know, okay, what kind of money do they spend for what kind of thing, so that they can later on kind of evaluate how we did with the money that they gave us. We also have all annual reports available on the website. And because the members of the cooperative have these kinds of, you can actually say, duties, we also address them and kind of see them as our publishers, because that's the role they have for us. And what you see here is in our, how do you say that, like coffee room, we have them on the wall so we can see them every day kind of in the turnover, all the members. Besides the fact that we have those kind of structures built into the whole business model, we also have some rituals and methods to strengthen our community. A couple of them, I'm just going to give you like a quick insight into that. One thing is we have, for every article, people can discuss and leave comments, and they can talk to the journalists. So we're in like daily contact with our readers. And we also have a community management team that kind of scans all the dialogue, all the comments, and then links people with the journalists. So here you can, for those of you who do speak German, you can see how we have some points from readers who say, well, you should look into this topic. And our community team, in this case, Lucia, who on Slack, in this case, talks to the journalist responsible, who is Priscilla, and she says, oh yeah, that's very interesting, we're going to look into that and maybe do an article on that. Or another example, where someone asks for a topic and one of our tech journalists says, yes, we will actually pick that up in our next article. And that helps to kind of have a connection to our readers. We also report on what happens in the, we call it dialogue, so in the comment section where we talk to the readers. So we publish some of their votes. We also have one journalist that is actually writing mainly from behind the scenes. So what is happening behind the scenes? How do we do things? How is an article produced? Or in this case, how does our data privacy, how do our data privacy rules work in detail? So we write about that and explain that. Of course, we also do events. We do bigger ones. We also do smaller events where we have the journalists mainly kind of do workshops with the audience, with the readers that are interested. And for the end, I kind of want to address, I think, the main questions that are probably of interest if you came here to listen to our presentations. And what we do ask ourselves daily is, how can we actually maintain a sustainable business model without big tech, and how can we grow without big tech? We managed to found a media outlet producing independent journalism based on a membership model, but how can we grow and exist and sustainably? This is something we have not yet really answered. I'll give you a few insights into the directions that we think the answers lie. One thing is, we kind of, and probably some of you do that as well, we kind of think of our readers, of our leads, of the people that are interested in us in kind of like this onion model. So on the outside of the onion, we have the casual readers that are up to 500,000 a month that we know that read our articles. And then we kind of come closer. We have the readers and the leads, so about 100 to 200,000 people that we have email addresses of that we can get in contact with. Then we have round about the 30K members and subscribers. We have about 1,500 accomplices. These are people that give more money or that help us organize workshops that spread like stickers and do that kind of thing. We also have some beta testers that kind of look at new features of the magazine with us. And then, of course, we have our crew. That's the inner circle. And what we try, of course, all the time is to get people from the outskirts one step closer at a time. And without the reach of big tech, social media, that's not an easy task. What we notice is what helps us most is email. So you can see here, new users in that case are basically leads or email addresses. And we start with the crowdfunding, and you can see how the email addresses and the contacts that we have accumulate, and kind of where we have peaks with new newsletters. We had, when COVID started, we launched a newsletter, a daily newsletter that had, after about 1 or 2 weeks, we had 50K subscribers, and more than 30,000 of those were not, were not yet Republik subscribers, so really new people. And of those 30,000, we had more than 5,000 convert to members, Republik members, and of those, we still have more than 3,000 on board. So that's 3 years ago, so we have a pretty good retention rate there. And right now we're trying out which kind of newsletters work. We had a newsletter round about when the war in Ukraine started that didn't work well at all. I think we had about 5,000 subscribers. That didn't really work out. Right now we launched a newsletter every week about what happened this week and why it was important, and that works pretty well. And some others, I will talk about that a bit later on. A second thing that works for us is referral programs. So if we have if we give members like a special discount that they can give to their friends, and we are trying to establish that every spring, so that people kind of get used to the fact that yes, we do need your support again and again. This is not a one-time thing. Journalism costs money. You have to give us money every year, and your friends should give us money every year if they want independent journalism. That is what is needed. And so we're trying to kind of establish that thought with those referral programs. And we're doing it this spring. It's the second time that we're doing this. Last spring, we started and we did it was our 5th birthday, so we said, okay, you can bring your friends and they can pay what they want. Okay, whatever it is. That was pretty successful. We had more than 3,000 people come on board, but the problem with that was that they paid much less than we expected them to pay. We had an average payment of about 70 francs, which is around about 70 euros, and the usual price for a year is 240 francs. So we have all those leads, and we will try to convert them into full-paying members this spring. And we will also try this spring another referral campaign where we're going to do basically kind of the same thing, but with a little higher nudged pricing. So we will see how that goes. Here you can see the last year's campaign where you could kind of pick your price. And one more example of things that we're trying out to kind of strengthen the bond and get more reach and growth through community is Challenge Accepted. That is a how could you say that in English? A format for climate journalism. So, and we actually created that format together with the community. We did 1 year of community work with volunteers, with people that were interested, and kind of developed that format. And we launched it this November. And now we're in the phase of just kind of collecting leads and getting people closer to us. And then we will start next year trying to convert those people to actual paying members. And I think, oh yes, the summing up slide. So to sum up, besides the fact that what we learned is that you really have to tell people, yes, you have to pay every year, again and again, constantly, if you want independent journalism, because it needs resources. That is something people have to learn. That's not something that just happens. And that people like to become a member of a great idea, but after like 5 or 6 years, yeah, I don't know, maybe there's other great ideas and they want to do something different, and that's a problem for us. So that's the one thing. But then what we know is community is key for growth. And you've heard that already tonight. You need the community that can help you grow. Collective effort leads to commitment. Being a member of a cooperative leads to more commitment. And relevant content, transparency, and dialogue strengthen trust and identification. And with those words, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katharina. And I'm very optimistic that it's going to take a long time for Republik to be done. So thank you. Thank you very much for walking us through the long game that you're playing there. I'm very much looking forward to the panel. But before we get to the panel, we first get to snacks and maybe drinks and maybe, walking around a little bit because we've heard a lot of great content so far. And I think it's a good idea to take maybe, let's say, 10 minutes to 7:15 for you to take a deep breath, get some drinks, get some snacks, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back here at 7:15. Thank you. I mean, we got a lot of experts already here. I'm glad you're back. And so what we've planned now is, let's say, maybe 25, 30 minutes of me asking questions that I'm really curious about. And then I'm relying on you in the audience to continue asking questions that you are curious about. But to start with, I would like to talk about basically the elephant in the room, the platforms themselves. What are ways in which they can still be useful for the work of independent media outlets, and what in that regard do we have to bear in mind? And if I may, I would like to start with you, Alice, because you were the one mentioning we have to decide what kind of attention we spend on what kind of social media platform. So what, from your perspectives, are the roles that so-called big tech can play, or maybe should play, for independent journalism?
Without trying to get it too nerdy and go straight into a discussion about media regulation, which I know is not everybody's favourite topic, but weirdly it is mine somehow. I am really interested to find out what will happen with essentially what is happening in the UK at the moment and has just, or is happening in Canada, or has just happened in Canada. I'm not quite sure where they are with it. But essentially in Australia, they wrote some laws. I am a nerd about it, but I don't fully understand it. They wrote some laws about making big tech platforms, specifically Facebook and Google, pay publishers for sharing links, essentially using news to rake in advertising money. The way that I understand it is that in Australia, that money all primarily went to big corporations rather than smaller independent publishers, and particularly local news organizations, right? Which obviously the cable is both local and independent. So this is really interesting for us because that legislation is now sort of moving around the world. It's been sort of trialed, if you like, in Australia. Canada has just passed the same sort of legislation, or is just about to. California, I believe, has had something similar, but not quite the same. And the UK is sort of flirting with this idea. And so being the sort of a few down the line, we have a really interesting opportunity to say, by the way, this has been done now in Australia and in Canada, and in those places, that money is not going to the small independent organizations which need it most. That said, I'm not particularly trustful of our government to ensure that happens in the UK. But it is something that we're working on. The cable is obviously plugged into a lot of advocacy groups, nationwide sort of independent media teams in the UK, some of whom I've worked with as a freelancer as well. And so that is an opportunity that's coming up. I do think that it's not a perfect system or a perfect, even if it was, giving money back to independent newsrooms very well, it's still not a perfect, system, because people would still be going through Google and through Facebook in order to get to news, where I hope that they would just be going straight to an outlet that they trust for that news. So yeah, it's I think that for me is the biggest kind of opportunity at the moment that I'm seeing in the UK. And I think that is what should happen, at least in the short term, that some of that money that has been just sucked up by these kind of monopolies, or a duopoly, as we call it, of Facebook and Google in the UK, really needs to go back into the people doing the work to produce the journalism that makes them so much advertising revenue.
I see. So that's let's say the one point where we talk about revenue share, basically. So the money that they're taking out of the content that you produce, at least partly, should somehow flow back. Harold, you have told us a lot about memberful design, and this idea of membership, community, belonging, all these things is something that if I were to look on the PR pages of Meta or Google, would be something they would also propagate for themselves. So isn't there, I don't know, a connection, or is there maybe a way besides the monetary side to tap into these kind of social networks?
I think one of the most important things there is that I can't control what the social platforms do, and I think any legislation is of course very important, but it's also always a little bit behind the conversation, because the conversation is about Meta and Google and not about TikTok or maybe that I chat with my AI. So what we mean with the memberful design and thinking about your community is mostly about what are the things that you can control and what are the things where you really can change the narrative. So independence from big tech is then I'm not working I'm not even thinking about the big tech. For instance, with the books, we were just chatting about that. The book publishing gives us a lot of independence because it's 40% of the revenue. And we also created a membership for the books. So the general memberships is 70,000 people, and then the books is 2,000 people, which authors really like, because they know if they publish a book with us, it's already sold 2,000, which for an average author is already a lot. And then the flywheel starts working. So that way, I'm not so dependent on whatever Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or all these weirdos are thinking of, but we can do our own thing. So for instance, we have, next to the normal books, we introduced a new format called Sparks, Vonkjes. Little books, less words, but you can print them faster, you can publish them faster. And for instance, when there's an important topic, for instance, in our country on climate change and farming, we can immediately be on a topic, present it to the minister, and have that topic front for you in all the other news outlets. So you really are much more on top of what is the narrative in the country, or steer the conversation there. And that way have income both from the book and be promoted mostly because you are working on the topics that matter to people. So I think the content itself is always the best promotion. And then I don't have to run around and see what they do on Facebook, if anyone is still on Facebook. But and from the big tech and from the platforms, we noticed that surprisingly enough, for at least for our project, we see that LinkedIn is really the largest engagement. So I noticed that in journalism, everyone's always looking at X or Twitter, but your average professional is not really there. They are really on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of engagement. And okay, then for a while, we do more on LinkedIn.
So do you, I mean, until you were now talking about LinkedIn, it sounded a lot like there's mainly dependency on big tech, and that's a danger instead of it's a toolbox, it's a tool in your toolbox. So you would say this is different for LinkedIn, or can big tech or can social networks be a tool in your toolbox, or is it rather you want to do it on your own, kind of?
No, it's just market squares where you have to share. And I think it was very well put, like how much time would you need to spend? And this changes all the time, I think, for all of us. Also in our private lives, how much time should we spend on certain social platforms? And and then we saw that the trade-off for a platform like LinkedIn is surprisingly well. And then we used that for a while until they changed something there in the algorithm and we go somewhere else.
Katharina, you also mentioned that you're working on strategies to broaden your readership and your membership, and couldn't that or shouldn't that maybe also include tapping into this pool of potential future readers on TikTok? I mean, book talk is also a trend there. So we see kind of the new media, so-called, tapping into old formats. So is that something that you could tie into, or do you also see the danger mostly?
Yes and yes. I mean, of course, we do use social media, and we even still Facebook, but also LinkedIn and X or Twitter, to have some reach and to kind of be present with our brand. But that is more to let people know that we're there, that we exist and what we do. And we're actually starting on TikTok as well, although we're pretty slow there, but we're getting there. Because yes, I do think the main thing about social media is that it connects people, it gives media outlets reach, and you can tell people who you are and what you do. I think the danger is the dependency that exists if the most reach you have is through social media, because what happens is that people don't come to you. They will just stay on social media. They will be fine with just like the title, the headline. They will not come to you and read. And so I think that's the danger for media outlets with social media. And the second thing, for us at least, is that I think social media is very good for the social connection. It can help people to connect. It can help people to mobilize. It can help people, not media outlets, to reach other people and to share ideas. But for media outlets, once the main goal turns into profit, once the main goal is, journalism should make profit, I think then you have a problem. Because what journalism should do is be accountable to the public. It should work for the public. It should criticize power. And it cannot do that if its main goal is profit. And the main goal of Meta, of LinkedIn, of whatnot, is profit. And so those are different mechanisms than journalism should have. Journalism is something you should pay for and not something that should pay you. So I think that needs to be taken into account. Yeah,
we've seen applause from Bristol there. So, I mean, there's one option using the existing social media toolbox for your advantage, but then there's also sometimes the discussion, we need something new. Sometimes there's this big vision of we need a European digital platform, and there used to be the idea of a European search engine, and people, from my perspective, for good reasons, are very skeptical about this. But Lorenzo, you are working on collaborating journalists all over Europe. I mean, one could ask, why haven't those editorial teams come up with a way to not only collaborate in terms of investigation, but also in terms of bringing your content online? And there are some like concepts that are out there, but why isn't that form of collaboration also working when it comes to distributing your content?
There is some degree of collaboration when it comes to distributing content. There is an obvious obstacle, which is the fragmentation of the European media landscape and audiences. I mean, we know that people usually read stories about their countries in their language. So there are certain limitations which have to do with that, and experiments to bridge this. We see some experiments. You either have the Politico Europe way to go with it, or the Euractiv, or You Observer. I mean, European media which talk, or the Guardian European edition now. You have more network-based models like ours, or like European Focus, or this sort of experiments. But yeah, I think there are some structural limitations to that. And then there are the more technical side that you hinted at. So anyway, the platforms that are available to distribute content and to reach out to audiences are not really European based, and they're not. I mean, they follow other logics probably, and also other. I don't know. They come from different visions. What we definitely would advocate for, or would wish that it happens, is larger public investment in this larger media sector, not only to support media outlets, but also precisely to support them or the infrastructure that is needed. It is not newsrooms, or is not the work of journalists, I believe, to build new social networks or whatever. I mean, it is not our job. Our job is to tell stories, to find stories, to tell them in a good way, an accurate way. But there must be other actors in the field which operate for the environment, the media environment, more in general in Europe, and do that at the European level, I believe, because yes, in some countries there are actors which operate, and there are interesting experiments. Those experiments can be transferred from one country to the other, and it's important that no country remains behind, and that's quite critical, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, and you're also hinting at another actor besides platforms that could take the stage, or at least move something and maybe money around, which is politics. And if we're talking about the role of politics, we could go down the platform regulation lane together with Alice, which I also have. We have dear to my heart this topic, but we're trying not to, but look a bit more on, let's say, what politics can do, not to regulate platforms, but rather to support initiatives like yours. And to put it bluntly, is it simply public money, or what is it? If I may start with Harold.
Yeah, I'm partly of a different school of thought, because I think having a for-profit aim is something that keeps you independent and not be dependent on funding. The only thing is, I think, what you want to be different from the other organizations, you don't want to be for-profit maximization. I think that's the unhealthy part in society. So it's okay to have because if you earn more than what you spend, you can invest that in new kind of projects. So I think that's the most healthy route. If you want to find a really inspiring young initiative in Europe, Are We Europe is a really fun journalism platform. They also do a magazine. They're based in Brussels. Really, really cool, and they try. Just like you, connect those different stories in different countries. So I think it's always healthy to try to find the ways where you do have control over, and find different kinds of income there. And indeed, sometimes just literally share that with your audience. Try to always find them. We were just chatting that what was also in her presentation, the newsletters are a really powerful way. No one finds it sexy when you talk about email, but it's one of the most powerful ways. In the simplest of things, try to get in the rhythm of your reader, and that's the most difficult part. That will also not get you there with TikTok or something, because you have so little control over the virality. Anyone can go viral. So the hardest thing is to consistently be in view, and that's, I completely agree. The newsletters is one of the most powerful things, and then you can build up their relationship, and then you can ask over time always, this is not for free, support this, or if you want to read more like this. Yeah, hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, kind of. I'd like to pass the question along, maybe to Katharina. So, what is the idea, or what kind of political support would you root for? I heard you chatting about that it's sometimes difficult if politicians or people or spenders feel too much affiliated with the news outlets. That kind of is a danger or something. And then you have examples, for example, in Austria, where people or where the government basically kind of linked advertising in media outlets to a certain way of reporting. So there's always this kind of danger when politics gets involved. What's the benefit? Is there a benefit?
Well, I wouldn't know, because in Switzerland, the people decided that politics is not going to get more involved than they already are. So, yeah. But no, I think maybe I want to start with just a quick reaction to the profit thing I said before, because I agree that I'm not rooting for, journalism shouldn't make any money. It's just for the good of all of us. What I'm saying is, journalism should not be used to make profit for, let's say, big tech. And that's what often happens. And what happens, for example, or what happened in Switzerland, for example, during COVID times, is that the two large media companies had the journalists working, what do you call that, short time? Like they had to work for less money because because of financial reasons. At the same time, paying out high dividends to their what do you call that, Aktionäre, to their shareholders. And that's the kind of thing I think that we can't let happen, that journalism is just kind of a cash cow, be it through advertising revenue, be it for shareholders, be it for big tech companies that use content to be more attractive to other users. And so I think that, yes, governments can play a role in that because they can give money to support independent developments. I mean, we're sitting here because government is giving money, right? Am I wrong? No, I think. And so, yes, I think that can be a good thing. In Switzerland, actually, the public decided that there was a public vote and about giving more money to media and also to new digital media, and the public decided no, we're not going to do that. Also, the public television and radio is under attack, more or less. There's going to be another vote if there should be less money given to those outlets, and I think. Maybe government needs to help in that case, just to give kind of like a stability to the media landscape.
Can I respond to that? Yeah, I think indeed it's always harder when you ask for more money. I think one of the things that always surprised me, and you're all working in digital innovation, is that in my country, if you publish on print, you pay, I think, 7% tax. But if you publish on digital, then you are part of they view that differently, and we are taxed, I think, 21%. And then in the media, the government is always talking about, of course, media innovation. This whole place is called like that. Yeah, we support that. We want to have the next big startup. And we were always surprised, like, well, then just make it equal. Let us also pay 6 or 7%, like the tax on books or stuff like that. But that's literally physical print, and this is still going on. And that's a different ask, because then you don't ask for more money. You ask to let less money leave the company. So that could be also a way to get it more equal playing field.
So basically, to see or to acknowledge that the media that you guys are producing is the
public good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Alice, I see you nodding a lot to the points that were made. What's your perspective on the intersection of politics, or how politics could get involved to improve the situation?
There was a little moment there where I realised that I had just slipped into just listening to you guys be really interesting, and I was like, oh no shit, I need to say something in a minute. So I've been really enjoying this. Thank you. I think that one of the things that I have come across is, what you guys were just talking about things like tax breaks. It is, of course, if we get given money by the government, it becomes then much more difficult to report on the government because it has a chilling effect. Whether we like it or not, you'll always be worried about losing that money if you say the wrong thing, or say the right thing for that matter. So the way I understand some organisations have got around it in certain countries, and I'm afraid I don't have any examples because I haven't read up on it enough, but I know that it's been said that certain things such as local news organisations employing local people will get certain tax breaks because of that. And so what that means is that, local it discourages basically consolidation, because if you consolidate, all of these, one of the problems that we have in the UK, I'm sure you may have similar problems, is that, you'll have sort of local papers, but they're actually just regional and they're covering a huge area with only 2 or 3 reporters. And those reporters don't really live in those areas. They might never have been to those areas. They're just kind of fed, news stories from other publications or news agencies, things like that, and then they write them up, and that's the way that it's working now, because that's a much cheaper way to do that kind of local news. And so, you'll have somebody reporting from, an area in the southwest of England, on a small town in the southwest of England, and they've never been to that town, they don't know that town, they don't know anybody there, so they don't know who to speak to about it. So there are certain sort of mechanisms, I guess, that government has that doesn't just mean that the government gives us a cash handout. And I think that seems to me the best way that I've heard to do it. We don't have those mechanisms in the UK, and as I said, we're involved in quite a few advocacy groups who are trying to get the government to take more action on this. And I think, at the moment, with a very conservative government, we have absolutely no chance. We've had 3 separate inquiries from the Culture Commission, and none of the recommendations made have been implemented, apart from one small bit of funding 5 years ago, which the cable did get some of. I think it was about £30,000. And then since then, none of the recommendations have been made. And we have hopefully a different government coming soon, but even then, it's very difficult to say whether or not they will make any changes. Mm-hmm. But it does seem to me that something other than just simply a cash handout would be a good idea.
I appreciate very much these different perspectives on the topic, and I wouldn't have thought that we end talking about the future of independent journalism and we end in tax law, which is now where we are. But it's you never know when you start a discussion. Maybe to stop it here in terms of the role of politics, and go to the third actor in the room, which I would name the traditional media. So the media that is established for decades and is now also struggling, but hasn't had the benefit to start something completely new, as you guys did. And Lorenzo, you, in your work, you have fostered cooperation with small but also bigger and established media outlets. What, from your perspective, is it that these outlets and editorial teams learn and benefit from the most when they open up to this kind of cooperation?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's, in my experience, it can be very different from case to case. So we had some positive cases of collaboration with legacy media, let's say, and some cases which didn't work out, and they're not members of the network anymore, basically. And that's fine. I mean, we still like them, but it was the wrong place. Usually working with legacy media, it's more difficult because they're usually much bigger, and it means that they are much more fractured, and the data team is maybe hidden or put together with some sort of visual team or unit or whatever. it can be difficult to work with them or to get them the approval of the editor-in-chief, or I mean, there's a long chain of command, and this makes things complicated. I think for them, this European collaboration is sometimes a way to show precisely their colleagues, their editor-in-chief, what could be done if they believed more in data journalism, or if invested more in data journalism, what others do, what could be done. So like source of inspiration, also model that can be replicated. We were discussing this with one of our large members last week, that they were saying, yes, and this being part of the network helps me in the dialogue with my colleagues in order to show them that we could do more stuff. And in other cases, it helps, I think, a bit, not always, in opening up precisely the European perspective, which is not obvious for a legacy media, which has a long tradition of decades and decades of coverage of national politics and national issues for national audiences, to open up to different kind of perspective that can be interesting for them, I guess. It's not just a Brussels correspondent that they usually have. It's not just their foreign desks. It's something different that it's new in some cases.
I really like this it's something different pitch. I'm really looking forward for something different now as well, namely for the questions from the audience. So if there's anyone with impulses, questions, something that you have been thinking about while we were talking and wanted to ask, this is your chance. We have a microphone in the room. So long, while you collect your thoughts and questions, I just add one more of mine, namely, actually that's a question probably to all of you, but I'll start with Katharina. If colleagues from legacy media approach you, what are the questions they ask, and what would be the better questions to ask? What should they be asking? Well, that's a it's kind of a meta question, but just to get an idea of what people project on what you're doing and what you're actually doing different and what they could learn from. So what is that they could learn from?
Jesus. Okay.
If anybody else wants to go first, I'll
try.
I'm happy to let you go.
I'll take the challenge.
Get off the hook.
I think one example would be what we have actually been asked. How do you manage negative comments in your dialogue, in your kind of Kommentarspalte, or how you want to call it? How do you do that? What do you do with the negative comments? How many people do you have to kind of manage that dialogue? And the better question would have been, how do you create a room for people to have a dialogue that doesn't need to be constantly managed? I think. Because the legacy media often have like a couple of people on staff that just kind of go through comments and they delete and they don't let them through, or they manage. And we usually don't have to do that. Our readers talk to each other, they talk to us. Sometimes we say, hey, maybe that wasn't very good. Could we rephrase that, or could we stop here? But we have this kind of eye-level contact with our readers, and we have the kind of etiquette and the room for readers to converse with us and with each other without having to be managed. We don't have to delete any hate comments. We don't have hate comments within our 28,000 plus member base.
And why do you think that is? Because they feel responsible for the media or the outlet, or why is for the community?
No, I think it is because part of it is because they are part of our team. They talk to us, we talk to them. The editor-in-chief talks to them. They can pose questions. The journalists feel responsible. They answer on eye level. They respond to critique. It's not anonymous. And I think it's people that are actually interested in having a constructive dialogue. And we have people from very different sides of the political spectrum, and it still works, and they stay constructive. And I think it's more about how do you kind of create that kind of room and that opportunity instead of how do you manage hate speech.
I'm working hard to create a room where questions can be asked without hate speech.
No
and
hate
there
speech,
is one. There is one. I'm glad. Please, if you would state your name and your affiliation so that we know whom we are talking to.
Hello. I'm Sofia Schleithoff. I work for the Prototype Fund, which is a funding project for small open source software projects in the public interest. And one aspect of that, of course, is journalism. And you have mentioned it once before. I saw it on one slide that there's Jitsi being used, for example. And so far, the topic was more spreading news, but of course there's also the background, the internal tech side of things, and I was wondering how you are thinking about this, whether small media companies or cooperatives like yours can self-host their own software, or whether there's necessarily some reliance on big software companies, and how do you deal with that?
Can I respond?
Sure, please.
In the past, we built our own CMS system and a whole publishing platform, and I was always very much promoting we should build it ourselves, we should be independent, so we have been doing that for the past decade, and I completely switched on that perspective, because one of the hardest things in that regard is maintenance, and the other platforms get bigger and bigger, and they get a lot of developers, and in our case it's like 12 developers or so, which I'm immensely happy and proud to have, but it's almost impossible to keep the same level of hygiene or the same level of things that you're used to from the other platforms. So at the design agency, we completely, after 20 years, stopped development and really focus on a sort of no-code approach, where we use platforms like Webflow or others, where we can immediately, quickly build something. And yes, I'm dependent on certain bigger tech companies, but it's also because I noticed that otherwise too many resources go to the development of something that becomes less and less of the standard that you see around you. So it's kind of I completely understand the squeeze that we're in. I'm like, okay, by being more independent, I'm dependent on these other platforms. But it does help us to way faster get something up, or to try out something for newer projects. And with our own project, we had the CMS, which also, after the first crowdfundings in 2013, after that also got a lot of interest for many years from all around the world, people wanting to also use that system. And we always had in mind, can we license that and that be also a source of revenue? But we never really could get it off the ground, as we had to become a sort of software company. It's a bit like what you saw with Vox had Chorus. And Chorus was being used by different platforms. It was also really focused on advertising, but it was also used for sport platforms and all that. And we always thought that might be the way. But they even are stopping that program. They're not even doing it anymore. So the creative side of me loves that, the newer, smaller things, but it's also really quite difficult. But maybe that all changes now with both no-code and AI, of course, which you can now build as one person again, is reminding me a bit of like 20, 25 years ago of the crazy stuff you could build as really small teams. So who knows what comes with AI bots, but...
Is there anyone on the panel who would like to build upon this?
I would maybe just say I second that totally. We're still working. We did the same. We're still working with our own built CMS. Right now we have 4 developers, and it's hell of work. Yeah. And we're not as far that we have yet decided we're going to change that. And we're in the same squeeze that you just mentioned, but I totally second that. It's you have a core business that you kind of have to attend to, and if you don't have the extra money to open up a second core business, it's really hard to do that on the side and be good enough for the core business.
Yeah, and I think with Chorus that is of course also being used by Washington Post, and that's Jeff Bezos' money, and it's still not. They're still not continuing it. So yeah, it's and we didn't change it yet for the Correspondent. I changed it for the other companies and initiatives, and I see that it just takes so long to get something to be built.
Tell me once you do.
Yeah. I think I'm telling internally, but we didn't make that big switch yet. But I think it's inevitable at some point.
Right. Maybe that's the room for the prototype fund to really jump in and develop a CMS for new journalistic standards.
A network.
Yeah. Nice. So are there any other questions from the audience? Because if not, I will then again butch with one question of mine, maybe a final quick round, because we're also hitting 8 p.m. We've just been talking about tech, and a lot about the digital realm is kind of, at least it feels tool driven, like the gadgets, the new shiny things that you need. Although email, as we heard, is still successful in that regard. I mean, a few years ago everything was about blockchain. Now many things are about AI. Beyond the hype, what is a digital tool that makes your work as an independent journalist much more easier, and where you say, well, this is something that really helps me now, that is tech that I benefit massively from? And please don't say, I don't know, WhatsApp or chat or something like something really like shared experiences here.
No, well, one very simple thing which I think I've been dreaming of since a long time, and also other people probably, and we're getting very close, is good automated translation. That changes really a lot if you want to do European journalism, cross-border journalism, if you want to collect information, if you want to release and distribute information. The quality of translation is changing dramatically year after year, and I think we are really getting close to a very decent automated translation, and that's a lot helpful, I think. So that's great.
Let's see, Alice?
Could you just ask the question again? I heard like half of it.
Sure, I'm sorry. So what is, beyond the hype, the one digital tool that really helps you in your day-to-day business? And besides like the standards, I don't know, WhatsApp or Signal chat or something.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you about my personal one, which is that I have a digital to-do list, and I cannot live without it, I promise you. So I feel as though, when you're working in a small organization and you don't have a huge amount of money and you don't have a huge amount of people in the room, it is incredible. We don't have a project manager. We're all kind of project managing ourselves. And I think having digital shared to-do lists is really, really useful for us.
Very good points. We got 2 more to go. Harold?
Yeah, I can't state obvious things like just how good life got with Slack or something. I stated Webflow, of course, because that's the one thing that I'm not a journalist by trade. I want to create new things, but you have other platforms or Mighty Networks where you can build your own platform, or all these different tools where you can just quickly build something and try it out, which is, I think, really helpful to test ideas and also to see if it resonates with an audience. So any kind of tool that does that, or as a designer, you work a lot in Figma, and in Figma, it got to the same level as Google Docs and all these things. That are really collaboration focused. That is so powerful, because Figma, you don't have to be a designer. You can change all the copy. You can really quickly make a prototype and then test that prototype, and that's really helpful. And now you can track images of it, give it back to the AI, and ask what it sees, and you can even prototype with that. So those are really handy tools.
Nice. Quick prototyping, also a good point. And last but not least, Karina?
Can I say Excel?
Excel. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think that's kind of, I don't want to say the depressing end of this kind of panel, but no. It's probably the honest and forward-looking. If you like, many little steps go a long way, and Excel is it's a huge step in that regard. No, thank you very much. Thank you to our experts on the panel. I think they deserve a really big round of applause. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to our organizers, to the MIZ Babelsberg, and to the Creative Europe Desk, Berlin-Brandeburg. Thank you to the team of MIZ and Alex Berlin, who made this possible and supported us along the way. And of course, thanks to you, the audience, that you are stuck with us here and are interested and ask questions. And I'm very happy to finish this panel with, I would say, an optimistic outlook on what you can do with innovative and independent journalism in the digital realm. And just as a reminder, the train driver strike starts or is supposed to start at 10 p.m. So bear that in mind for your logistics. Anyway, it was a pleasure to join you tonight. Have a great evening and hopefully see you soon. Thank you.